My name is Elena Marshall, and what I'm about to tell you didn't start with a betrayal. It started with a question one I didn't even say out loud. What would he do if I fell? That's all it was. A quiet wondering. After years of being the one who held everything together, I just wanted to know if my husband would do the same for me. If something crumbled, if I slipped, would he catch me? Or just watch me fall? That morning, I stood by the kitchen island, still wearing my gray blazer from work, fingers clutching my purse, like it was the only thing tethering me to the floor. Jason, my husband of 12 years, sat across from me on the couch, his laptop open, a cold cup of coffee beside him. When I told him I got fired, I expected at least a flicker of worry, a pause, a sigh, something. But he didn't blink, didn't ask a single question. Of course you got fired, he snapped, slamming his laptop shut like the sound of it would punctuate his disappointment. You've always acted like you're smarter than everyone else. Maybe now you'll learn. The words didn't sting right away. They echoed instead, like the way thunder rolls a few seconds after the lightning. I just stood there, letting the silence fill the space between us. I wasn't fired. Not even close. I'd just gotten promoted executive director of product strategy. After years of invisible hours and skipped lunches, I finally had something to show for it, and I wanted to share that with Jason. I wanted to celebrate, but something in me hesitated. I'd seen it building for months. The way he grew quiet when I talked about work, how he changed the subject when I mentioned my boss's praise, or the way he tensed whenever I checked my phone during dinner. There were other things too, how he'd started staying out late for site inspections, or how his phone, once left unlocked and open on the counter, now never left his pocket. Still, I told myself it was just stress. The construction business had its rough patches, but now hearing him explode with anger over something I hadn't even done, I froze. Do you even understand the position you've put me in? He barked, pacing across the room. How the hell are we supposed to pay bills now? He didn't ask how I was feeling. He didn't wonder if I was okay. Just bill talk and blame like I was a burden he'd finally had to carry too far. I tried to say something, anything, but my throat had closed. Not from fear, from knowing. I knew right then that the man standing in front of me didn't see me as his partner anymore. I didn't defend myself. I just watched. And that silence, that frozen moment saved me. Because if I'd told him the truth right then, if I'd said, "No, I didn't get fired. I got promoted," I wouldn't have heard what came next. I wouldn't have seen the way the cracks in his expression deepened, how he looked like someone relieved. Not panicked, not worried. Relieved. That night, he slept on the couch without a word. I didn't ask why. I just lay in bed alone. The ceiling above me, turning into a blank white screen where memories began to play. There had been a day, maybe 3 months earlier, when I got off work early. My team had pulled off a product launch 2 weeks ahead of schedule. I thought it would be sweet to surprise him. So I grabbed his The house was quiet, except for Jason's voice, low-pitched, careful. I stopped listening, not because I was stupid, but because the tone was strange. No, not the laugh I know, the one that made his this one was cold hollow. Frozen by the warmth of his heart. He was talking about me. He came out of the bedroom seconds later, saw me, and smiled like nothing had happened, kissed me on the cheek, took the food from my hands and asked if I'd had a good day. I remember that I smiled back, that I told him I had. I boiled water for tea and sat beside him on the couch while he flipped through channels like everything was normal. But inside, something cracked. A small hairline fracture invisible to the world, but I felt it. Felt it spread through my chest, down my arms. I started noticing things after that. His sudden disinterest in our Sunday walks, how he dodged questions about his job, How his mother Janice started calling again. She hadn't liked me from the start, always thought I was too career-focused, and now I began to wonder what she knew that I didn't. The night I told him I'd been fired, I didn't cry. I didn't yell. I went into the bathroom, locked the door, and stood under the shower until the hot water ran cold. I let it sting my skin. I let it wash away the last pieces of the illusion I had held onto for too long, because something was coming. I could feel it in my gut, the instinct that had always protected me. Something darker than lies or silence, and I wasn't going to look away anymore. The morning after, I poured myself a cup of coffee like always, even though my hands trembled just a little. Jason sat at the counter, flipping through emails on his phone. He didn't say good morning. He didn't ask if I slept well. It was like the night before had never happened. But I remembered. I remembered every word he'd spat out with that sneer on his face. And I remembered the laugh I'd heard on that call, cold enough to chill my bones. I hadn't confronted him yet, not because I was scared, but because I needed to know what I was up against. I needed to know how deep the rot went. Jason thought I was unemployed, weak, and dependent. I could feel it in how he moved around me, lighter, almost smug. He thought he'd finally broken the parts of me that stood too tall, the parts that made him feel small. And I let him believe that. I needed time. And when the truth finally came to me, it hit like glass shattering. That afternoon, around 2, I heard the front door open. I was supposed to be out, he thought. I was at the unemployment office or somewhere filling out applications. But I'd stayed behind, crouched in the guest bedroom, with the door cracked just enough. Jason wasn't alone. A second voice echoed through the hallway. Familiar. Clipped. It was Janice. His mother. Well, she asked her heels, clicking softly on the tile. Is it done? Jason let out a sigh, relieved, almost pleased. Yeah. Told her yesterday. She bought it. Crushed. Janice chuckled, the kind of sound that didn't belong in a moment like this. Finally. She'll have to take our offer now. No job. No money. She'll be grateful for whatever you give her. I gripped the edge of the dresser so tightly that my knuckles turned white. They'd planned this. Jason kept talking like he was narrating a weather forecast. Calm. Predictable. She's completely dependent on me now. Selling the house is just a matter of time. The house. Our house. I had picked the light fixtures. I had paid for the hardwood in the kitchen with my year-end bonus. I stayed up late choosing paint samples while he complained about how long renovations were taking. That house had my fingerprints all over it, and now he talked about it like it was a chess piece to move me off the board. You always said she wasn't right for you, Janice said, her voice sugary and smug. Too sharp, too independent. I never understood what you saw in her. I don't know how I kept from gasping. Maybe because I was too stunned. Maybe because my body had gone numb. Don't start, Mom, Jason muttered. We've been over this. And what about Anna? She asked. When are you going to tell her it's time, Anna? That name hit me like a slap. I knew it. I remembered it from the old stories. Anna Winters, Jason's ex-girlfriend from years ago. The one who used to date his brother Matthew before the accident. She had vanished after Matthew's funeral. Quiet, polite, shy. I never knew they'd kept in touch. Jason's voice softened, almost tender. She's ready. The baby's growing fast. Claire says he already looks just like Matt. I stopped breathing. The baby. Her baby. Their baby. I'll file the adoption papers as soon as the divorce clears, he added. He'll be my son. It's the right thing to do. The floor dropped out from under me. I sank to my knees quietly, the carpet scratching at my bare skin as my mind reeled. This wasn't just betrayal. It wasn't just an affair. This was a replacement. They weren't just moving on. They were removing me intentionally, carefully, step by step. I was just a name on a lease, a footnote in his past. The plan wasn't to leave me. The plan was to erase me. Janice laughed. Oh, she'll fold. Women like her always do. Once she realizes she has nothing, no job, no savings, no family, she'll crawl out on her own. Jason didn't disagree. He didn't defend me. He didn't even hesitate. And if she doesn't, Janice asked. There was a pause. Then his voice dropped to something low and lethal. Then we go after her reputation. Those old conference photos, the ones where she's with that guy from New York, they can be twisted. If it comes to it, I'll say she cheated. Or leaked client data. She always brought stuff home. It's enough to stir doubt. My jaw clenched so tight it ached. The man who used to bring me soup when I was sick was now plotting to destroy my career. My name. My future. To poison the very life I had built, just so he could walk into a new one clean and unburdened. When I heard the door finally close behind Janice, I stayed still. Minutes passed, maybe longer. I couldn't be sure. My knees were cramping, my hands numb. But inside me, something else had taken root. I wasn't broken. I wasn't trapped. I was done pretending. That night, Jason made dinner. He poured wine, turned on music, and moved through the kitchen like he wasn't carrying the weight of betrayal in his pocket. I sat at the table, quiet, watching. He smiled like everything was normal. He joked about a football game. Told me I should try relaxing while I figured things out. I smiled back and I nodded. And when I excused myself early to bed, he didn't follow. He thought I was breaking. He didn't realize I was building. I didn't sleep that night. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling fan as it spun slowly overhead, listening to Jason's steady breath from the couch downstairs. The rhythm of it used to calm me. Not anymore. I felt like I was living beside a stranger, wearing my husband's skin. By dawn, I'd already made up my mind. I slipped out of bed, dressed in silence, and drove across town as the city yawned awake, coffee shops, opening, joggers, weaving between morning traffic. I wasn't headed to work. Not yet. I needed proof. I needed every scrap of evidence to show that the life we built was mine too, that it wasn't his to take away. In the garage, under boxes of holiday decorations and old moving blankets, I found the storage bin labeled Home Docs. It was dusty, forgotten, but I knew what lived inside. Receipts, contracts, tax records. That water heater, I paid for it. The quartz counters in the kitchen, my bonus, the sofa in the living room, my split payment, and Jason's "I'll Venmo you later," which never came. I pulled everything, every paper trail that tied me to this life, and drove to the one person I trusted completely, Rebecca Martin. My best friend and my coworker for the past 6 years. The one who always slipped an extra sugar packet into my coffee after a bad meeting. The one who once picked me up at 3 a.m. when my car broke down, no questions asked. She opened her door in slippers and a bathrobe, eyes wide when she saw me. But she didn't ask why. She just stepped aside. In her kitchen, I spread the documents across the table. If anything happens to me, I said quietly, if I disappear or suddenly stop answering texts, give all of this to my lawyer. Rebecca blinked. A lawyer, I nodded. She didn't push, just said okay and gently rested her hand over mine. I didn't tell her everything, not yet. Not about Anna. Not about the baby. Not about how Jason and Janice had rehearsed my erasure like a Broadway production. But she understood enough, and that was all I needed. The next few days, I played my part well. I dressed down, tired eyes, worn expressions. I let Jason believe I was crumbling, unsure and afraid. I watched the way he studied me, measured me like a hunter sizing up a wounded animal. The sympathy in his voice was forced but practiced. He told me he hated seeing me like this. He said he was trying to do what was best for both of us. He even offered to help me with the rent, as if the house we lived in wasn't half mine already. But all the while I was preparing. I met with Monica Rivera, a sharp-eyed divorce attorney with a quiet demeanor and a mind like a steel trap. Her office was small, tucked between a florist and a dentist suite in downtown Seattle. The walls smelled faintly of lavender and printer ink. She asked questions without sugarcoating. Married how long? 12 years, I said. 10 legally. 2 before that. Any children number assets, the house. A joint account, retirement funds. She leaned back in her chair. Any proof of contribution to the property. I slid the folder across her desk. Receipts, invoices, and statements. Every major renovation. Every furniture piece. I kept everything. Her eyes scanned the papers. You have a case. A good one. Then she looked up. But I need you to understand something. This won't be easy. He'll fight dirty. If we go forward, there's no turning back. I stared at her and answered without flinching. He already is. There was a moment brief but telling where Monica's eyes softened. Not with pity, but with a kind of quiet respect. She nodded once. Then let's begin. That night Jason tried again. Same setup, dim lights, soft music, 2 glasses of wine. He played the part of the pained husband doing the right thing. Caroline. He began my name soft on his lips, like he hadn't already spit it out behind my back. I've been thinking. Maybe we should talk. About moving on. I looked down at the wine glass and nodded slowly. Okay. He looked surprised just for a second. Then he smiled. I think this could be good for both of us, he said, reaching for my hand. We've changed. It's no one's fault. Life just moves. He offered a number. A lowball settlement that wouldn't even cover 2 months of rent in a decent apartment. I blinked at him. That's generous. He looked proud. I care about you, Caroline. I don't want this to get ugly. I smiled softly. Neither do I. He relaxed, thinking he'd won. But I was already 6 steps ahead. I met with Monica again the next morning. I handed her everything. His offer, the recordings I had gathered, of his casual admissions, even screenshots of texts Janice had accidentally sent to me instead of about me. Mistakes piled on top of arrogance. We drafted the counterproposal that afternoon. And that evening, as I stepped into the house and heard Jason humming in the kitchen, I felt something I hadn't felt in weeks. Calm. Not peace. Not yet. But clarity. Because I knew what was coming next. And this time, I would be ready for it. Jason didn't notice the shift right away. He was so confident in his script, the role of the reasonable the man, offering a dignified exit. He kept rehearsing his lines like the ending was already decided. But things were changing. I was changing. I didn't argue. I didn't shout. I didn't cry anymore. I just listened. And that scared him more than anything. He brought up the divorce again on a Wednesday night just after dinner. He set down his fork and leaned forward, elbows on the table, like we were business partners about to shake hands. I think it's time to move forward with everything, he said, his tone soft, almost rehearsed. I've already drafted a few things. We can keep this between us. No need to get courts involved. I nodded like I hadn't already hired one of the top family attorneys in Seattle. Sure, I said, voice even. I just want it to be fair. He blinked. Of course. And I want to help you get on your feet. It's not like you have a job right now. I tilted my head gently. That's kind of you. Jason smiled, relieved. But beneath the table, I was digging my nails into my palm. He still thought I was unemployed. Still thought I was vulnerable. Still thought I didn't know about the baby, about Anna, about everything. That was his mistake. The next morning, Monica filed the initial paperwork. Her tone was brisk when she called. We're moving forward. I served him an official notice through his work email. You'll receive a copy today. I imagined Jason opening it between meetings, that brief flicker of panic spreading across his face. He didn't call me. Didn't text. Not that day. Not the day after. But on Saturday evening, he came home early. I was curled up on the couch with a book I wasn't reading when he walked through the door. His posture was different, rigid, tense. He didn't even take off his coat. You talked to a lawyer, he said flatly. I looked up quietly. Yes. You said you'd think about it. I did. He laughed, once dry and bitter. So that's how it's gonna be. Fair, I said, echoing his word. You said you wanted fairness. I didn't think you'd blindside me, he snapped. After everything I've done for you. My breath caught, but I didn't let it show. What exactly have you done for me, Jason? His jaw tightened. I gave you a home. And I paid for half of it, I said, standing slowly. The tiles in the bathroom, my card, the new fridge, my work bonus, the down payment on the refinance, my savings. He stepped closer, eyes narrowing. You want to take me to court over some receipts I didn't back down. I want what's mine. There was a pause. A thick, dangerous silence. Then he said it, soft, threatening. You want this to get ugly, I looked him square in the eye. It already is. That night he slammed the door when he left, and for the first time in months, I slept soundly. The weeks that followed felt like a storm cloud just barely holding back the thunder. Emails, counter offers, legal drafts back and forth. Jason's lawyer tried every tactic, downplaying my contributions, questioning my role in the mortgage, suggesting that I was emotionally unstable after the fake job loss. But Monica was a shield. Smart, steady, always one step ahead. She filed everything. Shut down their arguments with facts, with receipts, with timelines. They're playing defense, she said one afternoon, flipping through a folder. He underestimated you. Now he's flailing. Jason stopped speaking to me altogether. His silences were cold, weaponized. But I didn't need his words anymore. The only time we spoke directly again was on the day of the financial mediation. We sat at opposite ends of a long, windowless conference table. Monica at my side, Jason's lawyer beside him, a man who looked like he'd never seen sunlight or spoken a genuine word in his life. Jason wouldn't meet my eyes. He looked tired, unshaven, older. I wore my navy blazer, the one I used to wear on client pitch days. My hair was pulled back. No makeup, no jewelry, just quiet control. They laid out the numbers, the assets, the shares, the house. Jason tried to argue that I was attached to the memories, not the investment. Monica pulled out the file with every purchase I'd made since the day we moved in. In the end, the mediator nodded slowly. She has a case, he said. She's not asking for more. She's asking for what's documented. Jason slumped in his chair. He knew it was over. But it wasn't the numbers that broke him. It was when Monica mentioned something calmly, deliberately, that made his head snap up. She referenced a recording. A conversation between Jason and Janice. I hadn't planned to use it. Not unless he pushed. But Monica was a tactician. She didn't play all her cards, just enough to rattle him. Jason's lawyer blinked. There are recordings, unofficial, Monica said coolly. But we have the transcripts, including the conversation about painting her as unstable, the job loss manipulation, the smear plan. Jason stood up suddenly. Let's take a break. He left the room without another word, and I sat there watching the empty door. Not smiling, not triumphant, just still. I didn't want to destroy him. I just wanted him to see that I had been here the whole time, watching, listening, surviving, and now I was ready to be seen. The divorce was finalized 6 weeks later, not quietly, not quickly. Jason dragged his feet through every form, every signature, but Monica held the line. I kept the settlement. I kept my name on the house deed and received a reimbursement for every He lost leverage. He lost face. He tried once to send me a message that everything was done. Just a single line. Look between your legs. I wasn't angry anymore. I was just done. The apartment I moved into was modest and modern. Nothing grand, but it had large windows and warm morning light. For the first few days, I felt like a stranger space. Quiet, unfamiliar. Most of the boxes unpacked. As if this too might take time. But something shifted on a Sunday morning. I remember waking up to sunlight pouring across the hardwood floor. There was no Jason, No passive-aggressive silence waiting outside the bedroom door. No staged conversations. Just me wrapped in a blanket sipping coffee on the floor because I hadn't bought a sofa yet, and I smiled. It wasn't a victorious smile. It was something gentler. A quiet relief I hadn't felt in years. I started filling the apartment with my things. Not the shared things, none of the plates we'd bought together, or the couch we'd argued over for months. Just mine. A bookshelf I'd always wanted. A secondhand record player. A quilt I found at a vintage shop with tiny hand-stitched stars. It didn't look like much, but it felt like home. Sometimes I'd catch my reflection in the glass doors and barely recognize myself. There were lines around my eyes that hadn't been there before. A tiredness that lingered, but so did something new. A kind of steadiness. Like I'd survived a fire and come out carrying my smoke. I didn't check up on Jason. Not on social media. Not through friends. Not through whispers passed around at work. But information has a way of finding you when it needs to. Emily stopped by one Friday night, a bottle of red wine in her hand and a raised brow. Heard he moved in with her, she said, without needing to name names. Didn't take long, I shrugged. It never does when they've been waiting. She poured 2 glasses and settled beside me on the couch. And things are rocky, she added carefully. Money's tight. She's not working right now. His firm lost that big downtown project. I didn't feel triumphant. Not even a little. Just tired. Do you think they'll make it? I asked. Emily leaned her head against the couch. Does it matter? I smiled into my glass. Number, I guess it doesn't. Work became my anchor again. I stepped back into the office with quiet authority, not because I needed to prove anything, but because I could. My team welcomed me without question. I led 2 new campaigns, onboarded a senior intern, and handled back-to-back client pitches with a confidence I hadn't realized I still had. One afternoon, during a quiet moment in the break room, I overheard 2 junior associates whispering, "She's so composed all the time. Yeah, like she knows something we don't." I walked past without interrupting, but their words stayed with me. Because I knew something they didn't. I knew what it meant to rebuild, brick by broken brick. It took months, but eventually the anxiety began to fade. I stopped flinching at the sound of keys in a lock. I stopped second-guessing every compliment, wondering what angle lurked behind it. I stopped whispering to myself in the dark. I started writing again. Nothing fancy. Just scribbles in a notebook by the bed. Little pieces of memory. Dialogue I wished I'd said. Letters to my past self. Notes to the woman I had become. One entry I read back recently started like this. He thought silence meant surrender. But sometimes, silence is the sound of a blade being sharpened. I didn't mean to write poetry, but maybe pain makes poets out of all of us. Jason emailed me again on our anniversary. Not a long message. Just a line, "I hope you've found peace." And surprisingly, I had. I didn't reply. Not because I was angry, but because he no longer had access to me. Not to my mind, not to my heart, not even to my in-laws. That was the greatest revenge, not the legal win or the money or the house. It was knowing that I could choose not to look back. I still take the long way home sometimes, down by the park where Jason and I used to walk on Sundays. The benches are the same, the maple trees are taller. The air still smells like pine needles and wet gravel after it rains. But I walk slower now. I look up more. And sometimes I bring that same old blanket and sit beneath the trees with a book and a thermos of tea watching the world go by. A few weeks ago, a woman walked by holding a toddler's hand. The little boy wore a red hat and kept pointing at ducks in the pond. She laughed softly every time he asked a question, and I smiled because life keeps going. It doesn't pause for heartbreak. It doesn't slow down for betrayal, but it always gives you another morning, another breath, another version of yourself to grow into. One day I'll love again, but I won't rush it. I don't need a new beginning to validate the end. For now, I have quiet nights, strong coffee, a friend who shows up with wine and bad jokes, a job that challenges me, a city that holds me, and the mirror no longer reflects a ghost of who I was. It shows a woman who stayed when it mattered most, to herself.